Commander Elena Torres had seen her share of strange things during the Mars expedition, but nothing quite like this. The structure before her shouldn't exist, not in any rational universe. Its geometrically impossible angles and surfaces that seemed to shift when viewed directly challenged everything she thought she knew about architecture and physics. "Base, are you seeing this?" she asked, her helmet cam transmitting real-time footage back to the research station. The structure's iridescent surface pulsed with an inner light that somehow made her teeth itch. "Affirmative, Commander," Dr. James Morgan's voice crackled through her comm. "Those energy readings are off the charts. Whatever this is, it's still active after God knows how long." Elena approached the entrance, her boots leaving tracks in the red Martian dust. The structure had been hidden beneath the surface of Olympus Mons until a recent Mars quake had exposed it. Initial scans suggested it was at least 1,000,000 years old, yet it hummed with power like it had been built yesterday. The symbols, her team's xenolinguist, Dr. Kai Patel, chimed in. "They're similar to the fragments we found in the Valles Marineris site, but these are complete. They're warnings, Commander." "Warnings about what?" Elena asked, though something in her gut told her she already knew the answer. "About us. About Earth. The language is complex, but they're essentially saying, do not interfere with the Guardians. They're talking about humans, Commander." A flash of movement caught Elena's attention. The structure's surface rippled like water, and suddenly holographic displays sprang to life around her. They showed scenes from Earth's history, but not as any historian would recognize them. She saw ancient battles depicted alongside quantum equations, cave paintings that contained mathematical proofs, and medieval manuscripts that doubled as schematics for dimensional barriers. "This is impossible," Dr. Morgan muttered. "These records suggest human civilization wasn't developing naturally, we were being shaped, guided by something older than this installation. But not in the way you'd think. We weren't being uplifted, we were being forged." "Forged into what?" Elena asked, though the answers were literally writing themselves on the walls around her. The holographic displays showed scenes of an ancient alien empire, the Nexari, attempting to study Earth. Their most advanced stealth ships were detected and reverse-engineered by primitive humans who shouldn't have even been able to see them. Their attempts at psychic control resulted in humans developing stronger mental barriers and turning the experiences into entertainment, science fiction that served as both warning and instruction manual for future generations. "They thought we were the experiment," Kai translated as more texts appeared. "But we were the control group. The baseline. Every time they tried to improve us, something went wrong. Not with us, with reality itself." The final set of holograms showed the Nexaries' growing panic as they realized their mistake. They had assumed Earth needed to be contained, controlled, prevented from spreading its chaos into the galaxy. Instead, they discovered that humanity's apparent chaos was actually a sophisticated defense mechanism. Humans weren't trapped on Earth, they were guarding it, containing something that threatened the very fabric of reality. "Base, are you getting all this?" Elena asked, her voice steady despite the revelations shaking her worldview. "Every bit, Commander. And you're not going to believe what we just found in the deep scans. The entire structure, it's not just a warning system or a historical record. It's a key. And from these readings, it's keyed specifically to human DNA." Elena stared at her hand as the structure's surface reached out to her, responding to her presence in ways it had remained dormant for millions of years. The truth hit her like a physical blow: humanity's entire history, their wars, their art, their seemingly chaotic development, it had all been a sophisticated camouflage. They weren't primitive, they were precisely what they needed to be. The Nexari Empire's greatest mistake wasn't in underestimating humanity's potential. It was in not realizing that humanity's apparent primitive state was actually the most advanced defense system in the galaxy. "Dr. Morgan," Elena said, watching as the structure continued to awaken around her, "I think it's time we had a serious discussion about what's really under Earth's surface, and why we're the only ones who can keep it there." The structure's lights pulsed in agreement, and somewhere deep beneath Earth's surface, something stirred in response to its guardians finally accepting their true nature. The game of pretending to be just another developing civilization was over. The real work was about to begin. The news of Commander Torres's discovery on Mars spread through the scientific community like wildfire. Within weeks, the red planet's orbit was crowded with research vessels from a dozen alien species, all eager to study the ancient Nexary installation. Dr. James Morgan watched the feeds from his lab at the Mars Research Station, a growing sense of unease churning in his stomach. "They're going about this all wrong," he muttered, observing an Arcturian archaeology team attempting to forcefully interface with the structure's systems. Beside him, Dr. Kai Patel nodded in agreement, his fingers dancing across holographic displays as he continued translating the facility's vast database. "They keep treating it like technology," Kai said, "when it's more like a musical instrument. One that only plays in harmony with human consciousness." As if to prove his point, alarms suddenly blared throughout the station. The Arcturian team had triggered something, and the installation's surface was now rippling like mercury in an earthquake. Emergency containment fields sprang up around the structure, but they seemed to pass right through it as if it existed in a different dimensional phase. "All teams, fall back." Elena's voice commanded over the general frequency. She had remained on-site as humanity's primary liaison, much to the other species' confusion. Why put a military commander in charge of a scientific expedition? They were about to find out. The installation's surface suddenly crystallized, shooting geometric spires into the Martian sky. They formed impossible patterns, mathematical fractals that hurt the mind to look at directly. And at the center of it all stood Elena, her suit's systems interfacing directly with the ancient machinery in ways the alien scientists' most advanced equipment couldn't match. "Base, are you seeing these readings?" she asked, her voice calm despite the chaos around her. "The structure isn't just responding to human DNA, it's responding to human thought patterns. Our creativity, our intuition, our ability to see patterns in chaos." James watched in amazement as Elena's mere presence seemed to stabilize the facility's wild transformations. The fractals began arranging themselves into recognizable forms, DNA helixes, quantum wave functions, and strings of code that looked suspiciously like human genetic sequences. "The Nexary didn't engineer human DNA," Kai announced suddenly, his eyes wide as he decoded new sections of data. "They found it already engineered. We're not just random mutation or natural selection. We're a design system, but not by them. By something much, much older." The alien research teams were evacuating now, their vessels maintaining a safe distance as the installation continued its transformation. Only Elena remained, standing at the heart of the geometric storm like the eye of a hurricane. "It's a defense grid," she reported. "The whole solar system, the asteroid belt, the gas giant's magnetic fields, even the sun's corona, they're all part of a massive containment system. And we're the maintenance crew. We always have been." James pulled up deep scan data from Earth, comparing it to the patterns now emanating from the Mars installation. The similarities were undeniable. The seemingly random distribution of Earth's magnetic field anomalies, the mysterious geometric patterns in deep-sea thermal vents, even the global network of ley lines that paranormal researchers had insisted existed for centuries, they were all part of the same system. "Commander," he called out, "I think I know why the Nexary's attempts to improve humanity kept failing. Our supposed primitive characteristics, our aggression, our creativity, our ability to think irrationally, they're not bugs in the system. They're features." "Elaborate," Elena commanded, her hands moving through the holographic interfaces like she'd been training on them her whole life. In a way, James realized, she had been. They all had. Every time they tried to make us more logical, more peaceful, more civilized, they were actually damaging our ability to maintain the containment system. Human consciousness evolved specifically to interface with these defenses. Our dreams, our nightmares, our myths and legends, they're all part of the operating system. As if in response to his words, new holographic displays sprang to life around Elena. They showed scenes from human history, but from a perspective none of them had considered before. The great libraries of Alexandria and Baghdad hadn't been destroyed by accident, they'd been emergency containment measures when the accumulated knowledge began creating dangerous resonance patterns. The Dark Ages hadn't been a step backward in human development, they'd been a necessary system reboot. The installation is fully active now, Elena reported. And it's not just a warning system or a historical record. It's a control center. One of many, spread throughout the solar system. The Nexari found one and thought they'd discovered our prison. Instead, they'd stumbled into the security office. The alien vessels in orbit were now detecting energy signatures activating across Mars, ancient systems coming online after millions of years of dormancy. Similar readings were being reported from Venus, Mercury, and the outer planets. Earth's own defense grid was humming to life, responding to the awakening of its long-silent siblings. Dr. Morgan, Elena's voice carried a weight of responsibility that seemed to transcend her military rank. I think it's time we stopped pretending to be the galaxy's primitive cousins. We have a job to do. James looked at the data streaming across his screens, each new revelation more staggering than the last. Humanity hadn't been evolving toward some distant ideal of civilization. They had been maintaining their exact state of controlled chaos because that's what the containment system required. Their art, their music, their warfare, all of it generated the exact frequencies needed to keep whatever lay beyond the dimensional barriers safely contained. The galaxy had thought they were studying humanity. Instead, humanity had been protecting them all along, their seeming primitive nature actually the most sophisticated camouflage ever created. And now, thanks to the Nexari Empire's well-meaning interference, the mask was finally coming off. The first dimensional rift appeared in the Kuiper Belt, a tear in reality that shouldn't have been possible according to known physics. Dr. James Morgan watched the readings with growing concern as similar anomalies began appearing throughout the solar system. The ancient defense grid was failing. We've got another one, Kai reported from his station, dark circles under his eyes betraying days without sleep. This time near Jupiter's orbit. The alien research vessels are keeping their distance, but their sensors are going crazy. The Mars Research Station had become humanity's impromptu command center as they struggled to understand and control the ancient systems they'd inadvertently awakened. Commander Elena Torres's voice crackled over the comm from her position at the Nexari installation. The activation sequence wasn't supposed to happen this quickly, she said, her hands moving through holographic interfaces with practiced ease. The Nexari's interference damaged more than just the installation, they disrupted the entire network's synchronization. James pulled up historical data from Earth's own monitoring systems, systems humanity hadn't even known they were maintaining. The patterns were undeniable. Every major human conflict, every renaissance of art and science, every cultural revolution, they all corresponded with spikes in dimensional instability. Look at this, he called out, highlighting a particular dataset. During World War II, there was a massive surge in creative and technological development. We thought it was just the pressure of war driving innovation, but these readings suggest something else. The conflict itself was generating specific energy frequencies, like a planet-wide tuning fork. The Manhattan Project, Kai added, his eyes widening with understanding. The first atomic bombs weren't just weapons. They were emergency containment measures. The explosions created quantum ripples that reinforced weak points in the dimensional barriers. A new alarm blared through the station. One of the rifts had grown large enough to be visible to the naked eye, a twisted tear in spacetime that leaked impossible colors and geometries that shouldn't exist in three-dimensional space. All vessels, maintain safe distance, Elena commanded over the general frequency. This is not a natural phenomenon you're equipped to study. The alien ships, for once, obeyed without question. They'd seen enough in the past weeks to realize that humanity's apparent technological backwardness had been hiding something far more sophisticated than they'd imagined. Commander, James called out, I think I've figured out why human development seemed so chaotic to outside observers. We weren't just advancing randomly, we were responding to these rifts. Every time the barriers weakened, humanity instinctively developed new ways to reinforce them. The holographic displays around Elena shifted, showing historical events from this new perspective. The Renaissance hadn't just been a period of artistic revival, the harmonics of classical architecture and the mathematical principles in Renaissance art had helped stabilize dimensional fluctuations across Europe. The Industrial Revolution's steam engines had generated specific mechanical frequencies that strengthened the barriers. Even the modern Internet had a purpose beyond communication. It created a global network of human consciousness that could detect and respond to dimensional instabilities. That's why the Nexary's attempts to civilize us kept failing, Kai realized. They thought our warfare was primitive violence, our art was unfocused creativity, our technology was inefficient. They didn't understand that everything we did served a purpose in maintaining the barriers. A burst of energy from the nearest rift interrupted their discussion. The tear in reality was growing, and with it came a sound that shouldn't have been possible in the vacuum of space, a deep, resonant tone that made the station's walls vibrate. "It's calling to the others," Elena reported, her voice tight with concentration as she worked the installation's controls. "The rifts, they're not random. They're trying to form a pattern." James watched in horror as the rifts began moving, slowly but deliberately repositioning themselves across the solar system. The pattern they were forming looked disturbingly familiar. "That's impossible," he whispered, but the evidence was right in front of him. The rifts were arranging themselves into the same geometric patterns they'd found encoded in human DNA. "Not impossible," Elena corrected. "Inevitable. We weren't engineered to contain these rifts. We were engineered by whatever's on the other side of them. The barriers aren't keeping something out, they're keeping something in." The revelation hit like a physical blow. Humanity's entire history, their wars, their art, their seemingly random technological development, it had all been orchestrated by something trapped between dimensions. Not as a means of escape, but as a way to maintain its own prison. The Nexary found one of the guard posts and thought they'd discovered the prison, James said, understanding finally dawning. "But we're not the guards. We're the bars of the cage. Our consciousness, our creativity, our chaos, it all generates the exact frequencies needed to keep the barriers stable. And now that the barriers are failing," Elena added grimly, "we're about to find out exactly what kind of monster needs an entire species engineered to contain it." The rifts pulsed in unison, their impossible colors casting dancing shadows across the station's walls. In orbit around Mars, the alien vessels began backing away, their sensors overloading from the dimensional energies being released. But humanity couldn't retreat. This was what they had been made for, what they had spent their entire history unconsciously preparing to face. The real question was, were they ready for what came next? The emergency summit aboard the Mars research station wasn't going quite as planned. Representatives from 17 alien species crowded the main conference room, their varied physiologies and environmental requirements making the space feel like a particularly chaotic zoo. But they all fell silent when Commander Elena Torres began her presentation. "For millennia," she began, her voice steady despite the weight of revelation, "you've watched us wage wars, create art, develop seemingly inefficient technologies, and generally behave in ways that made no sense to advanced civilizations. Today, you'll learn why." The holographic display activated, showing a real-time map of the dimensional rifts spreading across the solar system. The pattern they formed was now unmistakable, a vast, geometric prison built of reality itself, with Earth at its center. "What you're seeing," Dr. James Morgan continued, "isn't a natural phenomenon. It's a containment system designed by an civilization so ancient they didn't leave a name, just the tools to maintain their work. Tools that turned out to be us." A ripple of unease passed through the alien delegates. The Arcturian ambassador, their crystalline form shimmering with anxiety, spoke first. "You mean to tell us that human consciousness itself is a technology?" Not exactly, Dr. Kai Patel answered, pulling up new data streams. Human consciousness is more like an operating system designed to interface with something far more complex. Our art, our music, our warfare, they all generate specific quantum frequencies that maintain dimensional barriers. The display shifted, showing scenes from human history recontextualized with sensor data. The pyramids of Giza resolving into quantum antenna arrays. The harmonics of Beethoven's symphonies creating standing waves that reinforce dimensional boundaries. The precise mathematical patterns in Islamic architecture strengthening reality's fabric. Every human culture, Elena explained, developed exactly what was needed for their region's containment requirements. We thought we were creating culture. We were actually maintaining the most sophisticated prison ever built. The vegan representative, a being of pure energy contained in a mechanical shell, pulsed with curiosity. But surely you must have known. The mathematical precision in your achievements. We did know, James interrupted. Just not consciously. Every human myth about sealing away ancient evils, every story about binding cosmic horrors, they were all instruction manuals passed down through generations. We encoded the operating procedures in our legends because we couldn't risk them being dismissed as mere scientific data. A series of new alarms blared through the station. The rifts were growing more active, their impossible geometries twisting in ways that made several alien delegates look away in distress. The Nexari Empire found one of our facilities and thought they discovered primitive beings in need of advancement, Elena continued. Their attempts to improve us disrupted the containment systems. Now we're facing a cascade failure. What exactly, the Arcturian ambassador asked, their crystalline form dimming with dread, are you containing? The answer came not in words but in sensation. A deep, resonant pulse that passed through the station, through flesh and metal and energy fields alike. It carried with it concepts that shouldn't exist, mathematics that violated the fundamentals of reality, and a hunger older than time. We don't know its true nature, Kai said into the stunned silence that followed. The ancient records suggest it's a fragment of something from before our universe, a different set of physical laws trying to infect our reality. Like a virus made of hostile physics. The display showed new data, revealing how human neural patterns generated quantum interference fields that cancelled out the entity's attempts to rewrite local reality. Every human brain was essentially a reality anchor, maintaining the physics of our universe through the sheer stubborn persistence of their consciousness. This is why we developed the way we did, James explained. Our apparent chaos, our ability to imagine impossible things while still functioning in normal reality, it makes us perfect for containing something that operates on different laws of physics. We can conceive of it without being corrupted by it. The alien delegates processed this information in their various ways. The revelation that humanity's seemingly primitive development had actually been the galaxy's most sophisticated defense system was paradigm-shifting, to say the least. We need your help, Elena stated simply. Not to contain it, only human consciousness can do that. But to support us, to help us repair and upgrade the systems our ancestors built. The Nexari tried to control us. We're asking you to work with us instead. Another pulse shook the station, stronger this time. Through the windows, the rifts blazed with impossible colors, their patterns growing more complex by the moment. The entity was testing its bounds, looking for weaknesses in its prison. Every human achievement, James said, watching the readouts, every piece of music, every work of art, every mathematical breakthrough, they've all been practice for this moment. We're not just maintaining the prison anymore. We're going to upgrade it. The alien representatives looked at each other, centuries of assumptions about humanity crumbling in the face of revelation. They had thought they were studying a primitive species. Instead, they had been watching the galaxy's guardians at work. As if to emphasize the point, Elena interfaced with the Nexari installation again. The holographic displays shifted, showing the true complexity of human achievement, layers upon layers of quantum mathematics encoded in everything from their children's rhymes to their greatest symphonies. The entity engineered us to be its perfect jailers, she said, her hands moving through the control field with practiced ease. But it made one crucial mistake. It gave us creativity. And we've spent millennia learning to use it in ways it never anticipated. The station shuddered as another dimensional pulse washed over it. But this time, something was different. The rifts flickered, their patterns disrupted by a new frequency. Throughout the solar system, humanity's ancient defense grid was coming fully online for the first time in history. And deep beneath Earth's surface, something stirred in recognition. The game of pretending to be just another developing species was over. The real work was about to begin. The entity made its first real attempt at breaking free on a Tuesday. Commander Elena Torres would later reflect on how perfectly human it was that such a momentous event occurred on such an ordinary day. The dimensional rifts across the solar system pulsed in unison, their impossible geometries twisting into patterns that made reality itself shudder. In the Mars Research Station's control center, alarms screamed as sensors detected physics breaking down at the quantum level. Status report. Elena commanded, her hands dancing through the Nexary installation's control fields. Around her, both human and alien personnel worked with desperate efficiency. The barrier frequencies are destabilizing, Dr. James Morgan reported, his voice tight with concentration. Whatever's on the other side, it's learned from every containment attempt we've made throughout history. It's using our own techniques against us. Not all of them, Dr. Kai Patel interrupted, his eyes fixed on new data streams. Look at these patterns. It's using everything it learned from our past, but it doesn't understand what we've become. The holographic displays showed the entity's attack, mathematical concepts that violated reality's basic principles, trying to infect our universe like a virus overwrites a cell's DNA. But something was happening that the ancient horror clearly hadn't expected. Humanity was fighting back. Not just with their technology or the ancient defense grid, but with the weapon the entity itself had given them, creativity. All stations, implement Protocol Omega, Elena broadcast across all frequencies. You all know what to do. You've been practicing for this your entire lives. Across Earth and throughout the solar system, humanity responded. Orchestra halls filled as musicians began playing compositions that generated reality-stabilizing harmonics. Artists created works that reinforced quantum barriers through specific geometric patterns. Mathematicians worked on equations that strengthened the walls between dimensions. The alien ships are in position, James reported. Their new allies had quickly adapted to supporting roles, their advanced technology amplifying humanity's unique abilities. They're ready to channel power to any sector we need. The entity lashed out again, its attack more focused this time. A rift near Jupiter's orbit suddenly expanded, pouring impossible colors and geometries into normal space. But humanity was ready. Activate the Jupiter Symphony Defense Array, Elena commanded. Across the solar system, vast networks of quantum resonators, disguised for centuries as everything from ancient monuments to modern satellite systems, hummed to life. It's working, Kai announced, watching the readings. The rifts are stabilizing. But there's something else, something we didn't expect. The entity's attack had revealed something in humanity's collective response, patterns within patterns, harmonies within harmonies. Their art, their music, their mathematics, they weren't just maintaining the prison. They were improving it. We're not just jailers, Elena realized, watching the data streams. We're architects. The entity engineered us to contain it, but it didn't account for human ingenuity. We've spent millennia unconsciously redesigning its prison, making it stronger, more sophisticated. The alien representatives watched in amazement as humanity demonstrated exactly why they'd seemed so chaotic, so unpredictable to outside observers. Every piece of human culture, every technological advancement, every seemingly random development, they were all part of an ongoing process of innovation in reality engineering. The Nexary Empire's greatest mistake, James said, his hands flying over control panels, wasn't in underestimating our potential. It was in not realizing that our apparent primitive state was actually the most advanced system ever created. Another pulse rocked the station as the entity made a final, desperate attempt to break free. But this time, something was different. The defense grid wasn't just stopping the attack, it was pushing back. All stations, Elena commanded, initiate final containment sequence. Show our guest exactly what humanity has learned about dimensional engineering in the last few millennia. Across Earth and throughout the solar system, human consciousness focused in ways it never had before. Art, music, mathematics, and pure creative will combine into something new, a containment system that wasn't just a prison, but a complete restructuring of local reality. The entity fought back, but it was too late. It had engineered humanity to be the perfect jailers, giving them the ability to comprehend its nature without being corrupted by it. But in doing so, it had given them the tools to understand and manipulate the very fabric of reality. Containment fields at maximum, Kai reported. The rifts are closing. But, there's more. The new barrier configuration, it's not just containing the entity. It's transforming it. Through the station's windows, they watched as the impossible geometries of the rifts began to shift and change. The entity had tried to infect their reality with its hostile physics. Instead, humanity had found a way to make those physics work within the rules of their universe. We didn't just build a better prison, Elena said, understanding dawning in her eyes. We built a conversion system. We're not just containing it anymore, we're teaching it to exist in our reality without destroying it. The alien representatives watched in stunned silence as humanity demonstrated why they had been chosen as reality's guardians. Not just for their ability to resist corruption or maintain containment, but for their capacity to find solutions no one else could imagine. The Nexari found one of our facilities and thought they discovered primitive beings in need of advancement, James said, watching as the last rifts sealed themselves. They never realized that what looked like primitive chaos was actually the most sophisticated order in the galaxy. As the crisis subsided and the new containment systems stabilized, Elena looked out at the transformed solar system. The entity was still there, still dangerous, but now it was part of something larger, a hybrid system that used its strange physics to strengthen reality rather than destroy it. So, she said to the assembled alien representatives, now that we don't have to pretend to be primitive anymore, who's interested in discussing some real technological advancement? The aliens looked at each other, centuries of assumptions about humanity permanently shattered. They had thought they were coming to study a primitive species. Instead, they had witnessed the galaxy's greatest guardians finally stepping fully into their power. And somewhere in the vast darkness between dimensions, the entity that had engineered humanity to be its jailers experienced something new, respect. It had created the perfect prison guards, but in doing so, it had actually created something far more significant, a species that could bridge the gap between realities and find harmony in chaos itself. The game of pretending to be just another developing civilization was indeed over. But the real adventure, humanity's true role in the galaxy, was just beginning.